Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started!
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I am very excited to be kicking off February with an awesome guest. So joining me today is Matt Paxton, and many of you might know who Matt is, or you might know him by some of the work that he's done. So and I'm going to bring him out to let him tell you all about himself, but he is the host of The Legacy List, which is a show on PBS. He's also been on Hoarders, not as a guest, as somebody helping people navigate through their clutter and organization struggles. He's a minimalist. He's married to his wife, and together they have 7 children. Yes, 7 children. They live in Georgia. But I brought him on the show today because I wanted to talk about his new book that is going to be coming out next week. And it is called Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. And so I cannot wait to read it. I cannot wait to have him talk to you about it. I think it's going to be a huge hit. And I just can't wait to hear his story. So without further ado, let me welcome my new friend, Matt Paxton, to the show. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
So glad. So yeah, when your publicist reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be awesome for multiple reasons. One, because I love the work that you're doing, but also because I live and am surrounded in this very woman-dominated space of people who encourage and support people and helping them declutter and get organized. And so it's a breath of fresh air to also talk to somebody who's a male, because
there's not many of us. Yeah.
Yeah, you are absolutely in the minority in our industry. So
I'm straight. Yeah. And I'm straight. I'm like the only straight guy in the industry.
Seriously, you're like a unicorn. You are a unicorn in the organizing and decluttering space. So I gave our listeners like a real 10,000 foot overview of who you are, but just in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm a dad of 7 first. I love it. It's amazing. 6 boys under the age of 12 and 1 16-year-old girl. Yes, 6 boys from 8 to 12.
Wow.
And that usually stops the conversation, right? The second part of that conversation is I was the main cleaner on the TV show Hoarders for 13 years. And I cleaned... I did it professionally for 20 years, just cleaning hoarded houses, literally every day. And people, they see me from TV, but when I was doing TV shows, I was doing another 200 houses a year. So, I've cleaned probably 1,000 of the messiest homes in the country. And it's really an awesome thing. I'm new to minimalism. You kind of summed me up pretty well, actually. With 7 kids, I don't really have a lot of hobbies. Like, I pretty much work and I'm a dad and a husband, and that pretty much sums it up. And minimalism really came to me out of necessity, not out of desire. With 7 kids, stuff overwhelms your house really fast. And ironically, this is a great love story. I met my wife because I read her book. And
wait, who's your wife? And we could plug her book. Who's your wife? And
I got to find her book. Her name is Zoe Kim, and some of you probably already follow her. Instagram is Raising Simple.
Okay.
And her book is Minimalism for Families. Let me make sure that's the title of her book.
My God, we'll have to get her on the show.
Yeah.
There we go.
She's like my mentor, man. Like, she taught me, she really converted me to minimalism. And one of my kids is, he has a processing disorder. So he really struggles with clothes. And I was a new single dad at the time. And unique situation where as a dad, I got the kids full time. And so I had to learn how to be a dad really quick. I didn't know. And my son socks was his thing, right? Just socks. He could not get socks right. And he would flip out. And he and I would get in arguments every morning, and I'd be like, dude, like you're choosing to behave this way. And I later found out the doctor like specifically said he's specifically not choosing to behave this way. He can't help it.
One of
But
those
we were
amazing
stuck.
parenting things that we have
Yeah.
all done to
all
our
done.
children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just destroyed me, right? And so I went online. I was still just doing Hoarders, and I went online and I said, "Hey, does anybody know anything? I don't know what to do. I can't get them to put socks on." And what it was doing, it was a speed bump for our morning. Like morning would not start because I couldn't get him to get socks on, and he would go through 3 or 4, and he'd be really frustrated. And I went online, and a couple people said, "Read this book, Minimalism for Families," and I was like, "All right." I read it. There was a chapter about clothes, and basically it was like your kid he's got too many choices. And I mean, textbook, I read this book and it's like too many choices. I realized the son that's having the problem, his closet is the big closet where we put not only his extra clothes, everybody else's extra clothes. And I was the sad single father in my neighborhood, so 3 boys, so every person in the neighborhood and
every hand me down.
And so my poor son that has I can laugh about it now, that has a processing disorder, he's looking at a wall of clothes that aren't his, which is a wall of decisions that were wearing him down. And it was really, I mean, in hindsight, it's awful, And so I read this book. It said, get rid of everything, get rid of all his clothes, just have the 6 outfits for him. And so I did it. The next day, my son wakes me up. He pokes on my chest. "Dad, look. And he's dressed. And he's happy." And I was like, okay, I just learned more from this little thing than I have at that point, it's about 10 seasons of Hoarders. And I'm used to doing the really extreme houses, and that's easy. That's a little easy, but like regular home was still not my necessity at that point. But it changed my son's life. So I went online. Who wrote this book? Find this lady. Turns out she's quite attractive, quite cool. And fast forward, we're married with 7 kids now, but her book changed my life. And what it did is it brought simplicity, right, into my life. And so that took me from just decluttering and downsizing to actually like forcing me to know, like, okay, what do I want out of my life? Like, do I really need things? Like, I was going on Hoarders to like hustle to make money to buy my kids a lot of stuff. And it turns out that stuff was ruining them, and so the minimalism actually changed my life for the better. Not only did I find this amazing woman to share my life with, but I also, like, it's made my kids' life better and it's made my life better.
I have so many thoughts. I mean, first of all, like, it's an incredible story about your son. And I've spoken, my listeners who have been with me for a while are probably tired of hearing this, so they could tell you the story themselves. But I have 2 girls, and my younger one has procedural processing issues and ADHD, and she's 18 now and she's in college and she's doing great. But she was on my show sharing her story of what it was like growing up and how clutter impacts her. And, they grew up in a house with organization, but knowing what strategies worked for her and finding that those strategies is so, so important. And, again, that decision fatigue, I talk a lot, whether it's with adults. I struggle with decision fatigue. Like, I don't like it. I know this about myself. So I tend to go towards minimalism, not because I want to be like, look at me, but because the fewer choices I have to make when it comes to things like clothes and shoes and whatever, I just find I can breathe easier. My anxiety is less.
Yeah, I'm not this like moral, ethical like guy over here like judging you for having stuff. I'm kind of lazy. Like, I just want to hang out with my kids. I want to hang out with my wife, and like, I want to go to the pool. Like, I just want to go do dad stuff. And by having less stuff, I'm able to have more time for life. And I'm not like standing over you like, are you zero waste? Like, man, that's your thing. Like, whatever love you want to do.
Right.
We call ourselves practical minimalists. Like, I mean, I threw away some recycling the other day. Like, don't tell anybody, right?
Oh God, now I'm gonna get hate mail, and so are you. So
I'll get an email, right? And it is what it is. I don't like the judgmental side of it. I do wear black shirts now. That actually happened. I'm embarrassed of the fact that I wear black.
Are you like the new Steve Jobs? Is that it? If every interview we see you're going to be on,
you know what?
It makes life easy.
They're all right. It makes life easier. I have 5. My wife kind of pushed me on. I have 5 black shirts and I have 2 pair of jeans. And she hates this. I really love Air Jordans. I have a nice collection of really nice Air Jordans. And I spend way too much
my
money
husband
on nice
is
Jordans.
my husband is a big sneakerhead. He has an Air Jordan
Okay.
suit on his arm.
There you go. Okay, so tell him, he'll explain this. I bought a pair of the Ben and Jerry Dunks. Right?
Okay, Ben and Jerry Dunks. I'm writing it down.
Ben and Jerry Dunks. He'll either think they're tacky and probably awesome at the same time.
Okay.
And they're too expensive, right?
All right.
But this is my point on minimalism. Not only do I have a simpler life and a better life, but I started realizing I had a lot more money because I wasn't wasting money on a bunch of crap, right? And I was like, hey, I actually can afford these shoes that I really like because I'm not wasting on a bunch of stuff that we throw away. You know, we stopped going to, this sounds silly, it forced us to stop going to fast food restaurants. And I learned, because I need to be healthier, guess what? I've lost 20 pounds, right? And guess what my car is not filled with? Stupid Happy Meal toys that never get thrown away and get argued about. So the 7 kids is what forced us to go this way. And it's the best decision I ever made.
What was the split of who brought how many? What was the split?
I've got 3 boys. She has 3 boys and a girl. And they're all about the same age. So literally the boys are 8 to 13.
Wow.
And it's 6 of them. And then a 16-year-old girl. And
is she like, I can't get to college fast enough?
Oh, dude, she's already packed. You know, she got her bag at the door, man. We're ready to go. I mean, yeah, it's a lot, man. It's a very loud house, you know, and we have them full time. So I mean, it's never quiet. We live in a very small minimalist home that my wife designed, and you actually, if people want to hear, they can follow the house at Raising Simple.
Yeah,
we'll
link up.
But I mean, I will say this: minimalism changed my life, and it's actually why I wrote the book, to kind of lead into it. I mean, I had to move here. And I had to go through my whole life. I had a house that I had lived in for 10 years with my kids. But I think most people always want to know how to get into this. Well, when I was 24, my dad, my stepdad, and both my grandfathers passed away.
Oh,
and then
gosh.
My grandma passed. Yeah. So I lost dad, stepdad, both grandfathers, and a grandma in 2 years.
Wow.
And I had to clean out their estates. You know, and I was a very young, naive 24-year-old kid. I was not, I had not really traveled. I was selfish. I mean, more so than normal. Like I just wasn't really in a great place as a person. I hadn't really even figured out what my thoughts and dreams were. And so I didn't really have a job. I got fired from my job. And so it was just kind of my job to clean them out. And I started cleaning out these houses, and it was really hard. And I was grieving, and I was like lost, and all the men that I looked up to had died. But I did like to clean. I loved like anyone in this profession, I love seeing a really messy space, and then I love seeing a very clean space. Like it brings me gratification. And so I didn't mind the cleaning, but what I didn't realize was I really loved all the stories that I'd hear. You know, I'd be like, oh, whose was this? Who's it? And I'd hold stuff up and I'd hear these stories. And so believe it or not, I really wanted to be a senior move manager 20 years ago, but there was a lady in my town that already did it. And it was a very small market. And I actually found out about NASM, and I reached out to this lady, and I actually went to a senior living community. I said, I'll do a move for free to prove it that I'm good. And they were like, we're good. No need. Thanks. We have our lady. She's great. So I went to the lady. I was like, well, I can't get a free move at it. So like, what do you not do? And she goes, well, I don't do the hoards. I don't clean hoarded houses. And she goes, do you clean hoarded houses? And I go, yeah, I'm great at it.
Did you even know what it was?
Nope. I had to go to the library to check out a book about hoarding. It's a true story. I checked out Dr. Michael Tompkins' book on hoarding. And I was like, yeah, I kind of been doing this. My aunt had a lot of stuff. So I ended up doing it quite well. And only as a business guy, I knew to only do that. Right. And so I did just hoarded houses for like 8 years and ended up getting on the TV show. I guess there's some industry professionals that listen to this, so they'll love this.
Yeah, for sure.
I got on the Hoarder. Yeah. So if you know Dorothy Brenninger, she's the professional organizer on Hoarders. She was actually the original producer of that show. She helped create it. And Dorothy reached out to me to be on the show because she had reached out to Peter Walsh. Peter Walsh obviously couldn't do it. His career was booming. And he said, hey, there's this kid in Virginia that'll do anything. Call him. And so Peter turned it down. And that's actually why I got on the show. Yeah, Peter's like, I ain't doing that. And I had just been trying to do cleanups for Peter. I had a feeling he got hoarded houses. So I was like, hey, man, I called him like almost every day. Please don't go call Peter every day. He doesn't need that.
Yeah, but Peter does not want that, but yes.
But I was just bugging him. This is, by the way, almost 15 years ago. And I was bugging him trying to get the work he didn't want, and so, and we never could really make it work, but he was like, hey, this kid, he's a hustler, he'll do anything. And so I didn't have any kids when I started the TV show Hoarders. And so I just went out and did every episode, and I did it for very little money, and I just loved doing it. And it turned out I really loved Hoarders, and so I just really embraced it. And I loved the people. They were fascinating people. They were tragic stories. And but most Hoarders are good people. They just had some bad things happen to them.
I was going to say, can you, for our listeners, because we have a pretty enmeshed group of listeners. Yeah. We've got people who are industry folks that listen to our show, and then we've got people that are looking for organizing tips and people that are struggling. And a lot of times people throw the word hoarder around. I'm a hoarder, my parents are hoarders, whatever. Can you just talk a little bit about really who a hoarder is, what defines a hoarder?
Let's define it. Okay. So hoarding is an obsessive desire to acquire a lot of things, right? It's usually caused by some type of trauma. And I can tell you from my 20-year experience, it's typically abuse. All right. It's either grief or loss. Someone's died, you've gotten divorced, or abuse. And quite honestly, it's often sexual abuse. I'll be really honest. These people got abused when they were 15, 16, and I get them when they're 65. Right? But the takeaway is something bad has happened to these people, and they look for happiness and joy in their stuff. Okay. And I bet a lot of your listeners right now are shaking their head. I do the same thing, right? You're frustrated with life. You feel bad. You go on Amazon, you buy something, right?
You get that dopamine.
You get that dopamine. Yep. And then the Amazon box shows up 2 days later, and you're like, oh, I didn't need that. And you feel guilty, and you feel bad, and you feel depressed for a second. So what do you do to make yourself feel better? You go back on Amazon, buy something else. Right? My people were really sad. My hoarders were really sad, so they did it at a much bigger level. A lot of people look for happiness and joy in other things like exercise, faith, alcohol, drugs. And yes, I'm putting all those things in the same bucket. We all look at different places for our happiness and joy. We're filling a hole of sadness with something that makes us feel good. Hoarding is no different. It's just really unattractive. Okay, it's really aggressive. And I just found, I'm a guy that failed a lot. I mean, I'm open about my past. I mean, I was an addictive gambler. I lost everything in my 20s, like literally down to zero. I mean, I had to beg a friend for $40,000 to pay a bookie back. Like, I lost everything. So I'm not in a place to judge anyone, right? And I found out that I just really like hanging out at the bottom. Like, that's a good place. No one judges you at the bottom, you know? So, you go hang out some fancy rich lady's house, certain purses, like, she's going to judge you and you're the help, right? But man, in a hoarder's house, man, they give me a hug. They're happy I'm there. So for me at that point in my life, in my 20s, I loved it. And it was great. And I got to really just do, help thousands of families. And I tell everybody, I got a hug and then I got a check. And like, that's an awesome thing. Like, to change someone's life and then they pay you so you can go support your family, like, that was insane. And I still kind of run on that. Like, I love it. I get a hug and a check every week. It's just awesome. And so I'll say for the hoarders, like, they're really good. Usually they're super smart, highly educated. People don't realize they do have money. That's how they assumed all that stuff. It's just something bad happened to them. And so I found that these hoarders were brilliant people. So I would just get blown away, like, on a daily basis, like, incredible stories. They're not boring people.
So how did you learn?
What's happened to them?
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, how did you learn the skills to work with it? Because again, you're talking about a level of trauma that is different than, like you said, the person that just says, I have too much, like, I'm busy, I just want a pretty pantry or whatever. And it's a different approach.
It's a different approach. And so it's not for everybody, by the way. First of all, I tell a lot of professionals, like, don't feel bad if you don't want to do hoards. I don't want to do fancy kitchens and purses. Like, I am dying in those spaces. I really excel in a hoard because it just fits me. But but the one thing, I mean, trauma needs to be a part of my client base, right? And that sounds shocking. But I come from a lot of it. I'm comfortable around it. My style of communication works in it, and that's humor. Okay, humor is the only way out of rock bottom. You can't judge someone out. You got to walk down there with them, put your arm around, and walk out together. And humor is the only way to walk out of there. And so I found that my communication style early on worked there. And The other thing is I actually worked at a grief camp for years, a grief camp for kids. It's called Comfort Zone Camp, and it's comfortzone.org. It's an amazing camp for kids that have lost their parents. And so I was a volunteer in my 20s and early 30s, and it was a very intense weekend-long camp for kids that have lost one or two parents. And I found myself a counselor at that camp pretty much every weekend it was available. And I left the addiction of gambling behind, and I got the addiction of helping kids that had lost their parents. And I was just as addicted to that camp as I was my gambling. And I remember cleaning the houses, and I was like, oh man, we called it healing circle. We'd go play, we'd go out hiking, and we'd sit down with these kids and we'd talk about their dads dying. And it would be like, oh, my dad got shot in a drive-by. Like we were playing basketball and someone came up and shot my dad. Like pretty intense stories. And so by the time I got to hoarded houses, I mean, I was learning my hoarding business at the same time I was going to these camps as a counselor. And I realized the trauma was the same. It's just the age was different. And so I started using the same techniques, which is shocking. Ask questions. And then listen. And then not impose your story on top of it, which is the hardest part.
That's the hard part
That's the hardest part. Because you can tell already, I'm a talker, right? And I want to put all my stories to make you feel like, oh, you lost your husband? Yeah, I lost my cat. Same thing, right? Like there's so many dangers in what you can say about grief. But at the end of the day, hoarding is grief-based. And so I was really lucky to have that training at the camp. And I started using the same skill sets. And then not judging. I mean, I'm going to be really, really, really blunt here for your professional listeners. Like, it is all about not judging. Like, you know, there's an old saying I had on Hoarders that said, we're all 4 or 5 decisions away from pooping in a bucket. And the reason I said that was I was doing a Hoarders episode, found a homeless guy was living in this Hoarders yard. And the yard was so hoarded, he didn't know there was a homeless guy living in his yard. Right? And the city, this is in New York City, in Queens actually. And the guy, like the city was like, you got to get rid of this homeless guy. He can't live in the shack here. So I'm cleaning out the shack, and there was a 5-gallon bucket of poop, like full, like a Frosty, right? A 5-gallon Frosty, right? And I got to pick this thing up. You're welcome for that. No one ever go to Wendy's.
Yeah, again. I'm like, I can't unsee that right now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, well, you're welcome. I'm a storyteller, right? And so I had to pick up this bucket, and the guy's like, I was like, hey, dude, you got to walk me through this. Like, how do you get here? And he goes, well, I was a stockbroker, and this girl broke my heart. And I go, really? It was all this over a girl? And he goes, well, I got addicted to crack too, but the girl broke my heart. And I was like, okay. And so I started talking, and we learned his story. Guy had some abuse in high school, actually, and pretty sharp guy. I mean, like, you know, this guy went to Princeton. I mean, successful guy, man. And ended up homeless in a hoard. And I was like, okay, we're all the way, you know, a couple of decisions away from pooping a bucket. And I said it very early in my career. And I have to tell you, it stuck. Like, it's still true to this day. Like, I believe everyone starts off good. And then a few left or right turns, their life's different. And so I take that empathy with me everywhere I go. Like, I am very aware that someone could be cleaning my house in 20 years if a couple bad things happen. I got out of one of those. I mean, I owed a bookie 40 grand. Like, that was one of my turns, you know?
Sure.
And some people took care of me. And so I guess that's what I really say, like, no matter the level of your client, whether it's a hoard or it's just, you know, someone you're helping them do their kitchen, they've called you for help. So they need your help. They might be paying you, but they need your help. And so I try to always, like, I got to have a servant's heart here. Like, my job is to come in this with full empathy. That's the most important thing. I don't care how many tools or organizing supplies you bring. If you're not on 100% with empathy and love and positivity, man, you shouldn't even be there. Like, you're not going to help this person. And so, because they need help. So the way you help them and the voice and the tone that you, and even the body language you bring with it, that's more important than anything from a professional level.
I love it. I have a couple questions as I bang into my microphone. So my first question is, the people that you worked with wanted that help, right? Were they at a point where they had kind of hit their rock bottom? Because I find that if you don't have the buy-in at any stage of the game, whether you're just somebody that's messy or somebody that has a true hoarding disorder, if you don't want the help, it's really difficult. It's like anything, you know, you can't tell an alcoholic they got to go to AA if they're not ready to go.
And I use that example all the time. If you have an alcoholic and all you do is throw away their beer, you haven't helped them. All right. That's a great analogy of cleaning up a hoard. Okay. So they have to have buy-in, but they have to buy in of themselves. It's not about you. All right. So I actually
100%.
require therapy. I require therapy for hoarding cleanup. They have to go to pre-therapy because that means they're willing to take a stake. Because I have the stats, right? I know what 60% of the time, if they go to therapy, we can successfully clean their house. 60% of the time. If they don't go to therapy, guess how low that number is? It's 0.
Yeah.
100% of the time it fails. And so that's not ethical for me to clean that house. If they don't go to therapy, I can't do it. On Hoarders, people don't know this, on the TV show, we pay for a year of therapy to that participant.
Wow.
They get the free clean out, and then they get to go to, now I can't make them go to therapy, but they get a top therapist in the home with them the whole time we're cleaning, and then they get up to a year of therapy on the back end. If we didn't offer that therapy, I think it'd be an unethical show. I mean, we're putting a mental disorder on, we're putting a mental disorder on TV for entertainment. Like, you're already starting off,
right,
a little sketchy. And so I'm very, and a lot of people say, well, I don't like your show, man. You're taking advantage of them. Yeah, if we didn't do the therapy, we actually would be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But did people want the help? No, my entire career, I would say more than half of my clients do not want my help, because I was hardcore hoarding for 10 years, and now I really work with downsizing, seniors mainly. And no, mom doesn't want to move to senior living. Not at all.
Yeah.
She's just more comfortable telling me no, right? And she has enough money to have the options. And so for me, then it's funny you say, you lead into the book. That's step one. That's one thing. I'm lucky that all my education is on those two groups, right? Mm-hmm. Seniors and downsizing and hoarding. Both of them very challenging. And so I have to make sure that the person is ready. And so if you're listening now and you're doing this for your family, like, just because you're ready for mom to be ready doesn't mean mom's ready. And
bingo.
So,
yes. I just wanted everyone to hear that, because I say that all the time. I say it to my friends in real life, and I say it to the people on our show and on social media. It's not about you. It's not about what you think. It's not about, I think somebody needs to do this. I think it's somebody's, I think it's time. I think they need to get rid of it, because it becomes a power struggle. And
a lot of times it's grandpa's new girlfriend, right? The 80-year-old little girlfriend that's kind of moved in and got grandpa's ear. And she's like, well, I know him better than any of you guys. No, actually, we've known him for 75 years. We actually do, right? And this girl is ready to take over, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, just because you're ready for this stuff, he's not ready. And so it's all about, I say, what's your finish line? This is my step one, because most people will call us like, I'm ready to move, or I'm ready to downsize. I go, great. What's your goal? Oh, I don't know. Well, I'm not moving you until I know. I'm not cleaning up your house of 50 years until I know where you're going. Because I wouldn't pack you up for a vacation if I didn't know if you're going to the mountains or the beach. Mm-hmm. Like, I got to know what to pack, right? And so I say, what's your finish line, right? What's your goal? Where are you going? And that may be, you might be aging in place, right? You might be staying in the home, and we need some adaptive tools to make that safer. You might be home sharing. You might have a new roommate coming in. You might be moving to adult child's home. You might be moving to an independent community so you can keep your independence. You might be moving to Florida to be closer to grandkids. I don't know. But I got to know what that goal is.
Absolutely. You can't you can't solve a problem that you don't know what it is.
That forces the buy-in. And this is and I'm talking my ear off. I'm sorry.
Don't. You're great. Go ahead.
The why is what's the and the why, you have to ask the why. And this is what does two things. All right. So we establish and because there's no point in hiring anybody or bringing in volunteers until you know, one, where you're going, what's the finish line, and two, what's your why? Okay, and this is something that I've learned from minimalism. This is new to my life. The why is, what's the spiritual part of this? Like, what's your goal? Okay, like, great, you're moving to X location. That's wonderful. But why? Is it independence? Is it health? Is it a girlfriend? I don't care, but I want to be clear on what it is. Okay. I had a very personal situation about 3 months ago. I had finished this book. I was getting ready to start promoting it, and I started to feel really guilty because I've struggled with weight my entire life. Right? Like, I've really struggled with as an adult with eating and weight, and I'm 25 pounds. I'm 25 pounds down right now.
I was like, you look great to me.
Thank you. I do. You're right. Thank you. I feel great. Yeah. I feel great, but I've really pushed it off for years. And I compare decluttering to weight loss all the time.
We talk about it on our show too. There's so many finances, weight, and decluttering.
Yeah. And so my son, about 3 months ago in bed, I said, we talk, we have feelings talks. So about once a week, they say, we'll have feelings talks, and they talk about something personal from school. And we talk about our feelings in this place they feel safe when it's just me and my sons. And my son goes, hey, Dad, are you going to die the same age that your dad died? He's a 12-year-old. And I said, what do you mean, dude? And he goes, well, you're 46. Your dad was 52. That means if you die at the same time, you're going to die in 6 years. And he goes, Dad, I won't even be in college yet. And he goes, I want you to be here. Like when I'm a dad, I want you to be a part of that. And I go, buddy, I'm going to be here, man. Like, do you worry about that? And he goes, yeah, I worry about it all the time. And I go, buddy, I'm going to be here. And he goes, well, then why do you eat all that food that you say you shouldn't eat?
Boom, mic drop right there.
And I started working out the next day. And I went on a diet the next day. So I want to be a grandpa. Like, that's my why. Okay. And so I literally write it on a piece of paper and I put it on the wall. All right. Anytime I want to quit, I remind myself, I want to be a grandpa. All right. So for your clients, you've got to get that why. You got to be clear on it. Okay. Very clear on this why, because it's so easy to quit, especially the cleaner houses. Hoarding, to what you alluded to earlier, they're kind of stuck. They got to, if I'm in your house, dude, you're going to lose your house or you're going to lose your family. Like, that's if me personally, like, right. I am the last resort. Like, you're in trouble if I'm cleaning your house. Okay. But if I'm at your mom's house, she can shut the closet door. She can shut the bedroom door. She can shut a pantry door and it can go away for another year. That's actually a harder situation to clean. And so you gotta establish where are we going and what's our why. And that why keeps you going when it gets hard, and it establishes the buy-in because it makes it personal. It gives them a goal.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the book because I have some specific questions about that connection. So sit tight. We'll be right back. How many of you have ever thought, I have absolutely nothing to wear, even though you're staring at a rack filled with clothes? If that's you, you are absolutely not alone. I dreaded shopping. I dreaded the thought of shopping until I met my friend, Jeannie Stithma-Winnie, who's the founder of Your Color Guru. Your Color Guru looks at your personalized style, hair color, eye color, complexion, and helps match what color schemes look best for you. So instead of sitting there buying things that you think are going to look good or that you hope look good, Jeannie actually allows you to shop freely within the guise of saying, these are the colors that make you look your best, which quite frankly, who doesn't want to look their best? So she put together a special coupon code for This Organized Life listeners. And I can tell you that I've been getting tons of thank you notes from people saying this has completely revolutionized how they shop and allowed them to make smarter choices when they are going to, whether it's online shopping or in-person shopping. So I encourage you to check this out. Visit her website, Your Color Guru, and she gives a special promo code to all This Organized Life listeners. Just punch in the code Organized Life and you can get 10% off your consultation. I am telling you, it is a game changer. It was a game changer for me, and it is a game changer for all of the people who I know have been working with her for the past 2 years. So definitely check it out. And when you talk to her, make sure to tell her that I sent you. I have people that are listening to our show. I have people in real life where the clean out becomes extremely emotional, and because it might be, like you said, a death. So things are not replaceable, and things all of a sudden your stuff takes on a new meaning. This was my mom's, this was my dad's, this was my kids, this was whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to cuss? Because this is important for this one statement. You can cut it if you don't like it.
Well, we'll cut it if we have to. Yeah. Go ahead. It's fine.
Everybody's a hero when they die. Okay? Even assholes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, you hated your dad 3 months ago, but now that he's dead, you want to keep everything. Right? And that's a really challenging emotional thing. And so I deal with this a lot in cleanouts, right? Heavy emotion. And rarely do family members grieve at the same pace.
So true. So true.
I randomly told this story the other day, and I hadn't thought about it. When my dad died, my brother and I, my brother was 28, I was 24. We both moved back, and my dad very quickly got cancer, and they said, you got 3 weeks. So my dad only had 3 weeks to live. Well, for my dad, it was a great way to go. Like, he wasn't a fighter. He wasn't going to fight this thing for 3 years. Like, he was an alcoholic. He loved to party. So he threw a big party, and he said goodbye to everybody. He basically created his own funeral, really. It was actually pretty magical. And he said goodbye to everybody. We heard all the stories. And then he died 2 weeks later. It's actually a great way to go, right? And my brother and I were stuck in this house, and we had to go through stuff. My brother was counting a jar of pennies my dad had. My brother spent 3 days counting pennies. And I was literally counting pennies. And I was furious because I was in the other room starting to clean the house up. Guess what? Now as an adult, I realized we're grieving our own ways. But as a kid, I didn't understand that. And so I will say, the emotions get really high, especially when there's a recent loss. I saw a graphic one time where somebody showed up to the funeral with a U-Haul at the back of their truck, right? And, like, that's such a great visual. Like, that's how some people, they get to work, right? That's how some people grieve. And some people just have to put it on hold. And so I counsel families all the time on that. Like, you got to respect whatever your loved one's going through. They're just not doing the same pace you're doing, but you're all sad. Remember that. And the clean out is a good way to keep busy, keep going. But I encourage families, man, if you don't have to, don't do it like the first month after the loss. If you don't have to. Some people have to, though.
Right. I understand. So much of the work that you do is about that whole storytelling and giving honor where it needs to be, but also knowing when and what to let go of. I'm wondering if you could just kind of walk us through a little bit about your strategy, your approach, because I think this is such a relatable topic to people.
So my experience in the last 20 years is we hold on to stuff because of the memories attached to the stuff. It's actually, like, here's a secret. Anyone that works in this profession, it's never about the stuff, like, ever. It's just crap, man. It's crap that we paid too much money for. Rarely is there anything that's that important, right? I mean, like, 1% of the stuff is important. The rest of it doesn't matter. Some of the happiest people I've ever met are, like, after their houses burned down, right? Like, or after divorce where they lost everything. Like, those guys end up being pretty happy because they don't have all that stuff weighing them down. So I'm telling you, you hold on to the stuff because you haven't dealt with the emotions behind the stuff. And so my whole theory is, a lot of people say, well, what's Marie Kondo? She's about to keep the joy, what sparks joy? And that's great if it works for you. My clients are hoarders and seniors. Everything brings them joy. So that doesn't work. All right. So I've really kind of nine my down to keep, tell the stories. Because the stories is what separates the items from the people. And so to tell those stories, you got to have an audience. So I really don't like cleaning by myself. I think that's a mistake. Like, especially if it's grandma's still alive, right? If you're in a situation where you're cleaning out a house after a couple people passed away and it's you and the siblings and cousins, man, you got to make time to tell those stories. Like, because the story, first of all, everyone thinks we don't want any of their stuff. Right? So many of my clients, they're like, a grandma's like, well, my grandkids don't want this stuff. Right? And I'm like, well, do they know why you want it? Like, I talk about this is a story not in the book. So the book is filled with it's my 9 main tips. It walks you through all this. And then there's a story from a client for each one.
Okay.
I'm going to tell this story because it tells the difference. When my grandma's still alive, by the way, she's 96. She helped raise me. This is my only grandma that's still alive. She was in her 40s when I was a kid. So, like, my age now, right? And so she was super active, super fun. We'd go skiing, we'd go hiking, like, we'd bike all the time. And there was this hill at the back of my neighborhood. And my grandma really helped raise us. My mom was working. And my grandma took us for a bike ride, and it's called Dead Man's Hill, right? I love this. It's like straight out of, like, Stand By Me. Right?
I was just going to say,
yeah. So Dead Man's Hill, it's about a half mile. But when you're a kid, it's 5 miles long. Right, and it has this long curve at the bottom, and no one was allowed to ride Dead Man's Hill. Like, you were not allowed, right? And so my brother and I, we didn't tell that to my grandma. So we're riding as fast as we can towards Dead Man, and then my brother and I, we both hit our brakes. Well, Nanny, my grandma, flies down Dead Man's Hill on her bike. 46-year-old lady screaming. I mean, howling, ooh, screaming down the thing. Going down, she makes the turn. We don't see her. We go back to our house, and I'm like 8. They're like 6 at this point. I think my brother was 10. We get back to the house an hour later. My grandmother, she's supposed to be watching us. My grandmother comes back furious, screaming. She wants to spank us. Why'd you let me go? We're not allowed to go down that hill, Nanny. We're not allowed. She's furious, right? So fast forward 4 years later, it's time for us to clean out her house. She's moving into independent living, and she has a lot of stuff. She's not a hoarder. She's probably listening. Just want to clarify, my grandmother's not a hoarder. She gets very upset when I mention this. But I said
Nanny is not a hoarder.
Yeah.
Not a hoarder. She's a collector.
Yeah. And she will literally go online and correct that she's not a hoarder. So she still has her iPad, And so when she was time to get rid of her stuff, she wanted me to have her dining room. And I don't want any china. I didn't want my china from when I got divorced. Why would I want my grandmother's china? Right? I didn't want any of the brown furniture. We're minimalists. But what I did want was the emblem on the front of that bicycle. Right? That Huffy emblem, because I love that story. I love that my grandma did that. All right. So that story is really summing up what I believe, my whole system, right? It's tell stories, because it's not that I didn't want my grandma's stuff. I just didn't want the stuff that my grandma wanted me to have. There's stuff about my grandma that I adore. And I love my grandma. She's like the greatest lady in the world. She's hilarious. She's amazing. She was an entrepreneur in the 70s. She's a badass, right? But that bike tells me that more than the china. And so I really have to push, and I talk about it a lot in the book. You've got to communicate. You've got to tell the stories, because you'll start to find out that it's not that your kids or grandkids don't want your stuff. They just don't want that stuff.
And we have a personal story about Josh, my husband's dad, who passed away. His dad was much older. And so his dad passed away when he was 83, and we were in our early 30s at the time.
Yeah.
And and his dad was an Cuban immigrant that came over, and Josh only wanted this one little figurine that his dad would walk around with when he started losing it. And that's all he wanted. And he didn't have a lot, but that was what he wanted. And to this day, this little figurine sits in our bedroom, and it just makes us chuckle because it reminds us of him, But here's my question, okay? Because here's where I think people are going to have a question is, you wanted the emblem because that's what mattered to you, but your grandmother wanted that china because that was important to her. How does the person listening convince Nanny that it's okay for you not to want the china?
All right. Well, first, you have to tell her.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. Okay. You have to say, you don't say, I don't want your stuff. You say, Nanny, I love you. Do you remember that time we were on a bike? And then you tell that story to grandma. Say, that's what I love about you. And you list the amazing things about grandma. And you say, I adore you, Nanny. This is what I want to remember you. This is your legacy, not the china. Now, let's go find someone that wants that china, because there is somebody in the family that does. Because there's a cousin or someone that just remembers Nanny's fancy china. Right? And wants it more than you do. And so you got to look around. If they don't want it, then you try to donate it.
Right.
Not sell. Donate over sell. A lot of people get a little weird about that. I'm going to just flat out say it, man. You will never be happy when you sell something. It will not bring as much joy as donating does. Period.
I love it. We can stop right here, people. We won't, but I say it all the time for multiple reasons. I mean, for me, I say again, keep your eye on the focus of the project that you're working on is to declutter. Don't get side-railed by trying to sell stuff, but you also feel that your stuff is worth more than it is. And I'll talk about my mother-in-law, because unlike your nanny, she's not listening to this show. And I love my mother-in-law, and everyone knows I love my mother-in-law, but she thinks everything has we could sell this, we could make what, and I'm like, why?
So let's talk through real quick. This is important for the listeners. Why does a mother-in-law feel that way? And I don't know your mother, so I'm not going to say her specifically, but generically, most of the time, we have to understand these are the last kids of the Depression. They had nothing. They remember true hunger. I remember my grandma. I was telling my grandma one time. And by the way, there's I've got a bunch of conversation starters in the book, right? That you can ask your mother-in-law these stories to start. If they're not willing to tell the stories, there's about 20 different questions you can ask them to get them started, right? Just to kind of prime it, to get them going. But they remember hardship that like you and I don't remember. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you which day they were allowed to get gas in the 70s. They'll say, I was odd or I was even. Most people don't even know what that means. Go ask your grandma if they were odd or even.
I remember sitting in the car with my parents on the gas. I was a kid in the 70s, so I'm a little older than you.
Yeah.
But
but not much, right? But like they'll tell you that stuff. Like ask them what their first paid job was and find out how much they made an hour. It's probably like a nickel, right? And happy to have it, right? But like they worked, and I'll be honest, I think they did work harder than we did. We worked differently, but like they were like knuckles, working their butts off and in a different way, and they didn't have the life we have. I'm not saying that everything's harder, but like they went through the war, like they did some real stuff that we can't understand.
Well, we also live in a more disposable society where back in the day when you bought furniture, that was your furniture, you're done, check it off the list. Now it's like,
and that was it forever.
Correct.
And so I think the back to the real question is, how do we communicate to grandma to let her know that we love her? We just want different stuff. You got to say it. You got to say that you don't want it. Then you got to tell the story, and then share the feelings as to why, right? And then and that's really my process in the book is called the legacy list, right? My TV show is called Legacy List. What a legacy list is a list of 5 or 6 items that tell your family story, right? After you're gone, and you pick 5 or 6 items. That figurine you told me about your husband's father, man, that's a legacy item. That's amazing. And the kids will love it because they remember it too, right? They heard that story 100 times. My dad, everyone died before I had my family that I have now. So my kids never met any of the men that raised me, but they know all about them because I have one picture of each of them and they've heard the stories 100 times. It's like, they'll be like, hey, tell me that story about when your grandpa took you fishing and you had to run away from a bear, right? And that's a true story. We were fishing in Colorado up in the Rocky Mountains, and my brother and I were sitting in the back of a pickup, and a bear started chasing our pickup. And I think now what my grandfather must have thought. I mean, we were on the outside of the truck. He was on the inside of the truck. We were just in the back of the pickup in the bed, and a bear is chasing us. And my grandpa's flying down a dirt country road on the side of a mountain. Like, he must have been freaking out, right? And he goes, throw the fish. And we hear him yell, throw the fish out, because the bear's getting closer and closer and closer. So we threw all of our fish, all 8 of our fish. We could each get 4, and he could get 8. So we threw 16 fish at this bear. And by the way, this is my grandfather. They were like hardworking people. Like, that was what we were going to eat that night. Like, we had to go catch or pick what we were going to eat each night. Well, we threw all 16 fish out, and the bear stopped, and we jumped out, and we get in the cab, and he drives away. He's like, where's the rest of the fish? We're like, we threw them on the dirt road. And he's like, you only had to throw 1 fish.
Oh, no.
Not 16. And I was like, that makes sense, actually. So the story there is, right, my kids still ask me, they love that story. And you can tell that story for 20 minutes or 2 minutes, right?
For sure.
But like, that's the stuff they want. And I have one of my grandfather's little fish things, right? You tell these stories, you share these stories. And by the way, you're thinking right now, the listeners, I don't have any stories like that. Yes, you do. Everybody has a story. If someone raised you, you got a story, all right? And a stranger will think it's fascinating. Your son won't, because your son's heard it 150 times.
Yeah.
But people will. So back to, how do we get rid of it? You got to communicate the stories, and then you got to create that legacy list, all right? And pick that 5 or 6, because once you pick that 5 or 6 items that are like absolutely hands off, I got to have them, you start to realize you don't need some other stuff, right? Because you've got the big memories, and you start to share stories, and then start to pick through them. I'm big on donating first. There's always someone that needs things more than you do. Like, think about it. Like, really think, if you've hired me, you don't need the money. I'll tell you that right now. Right? If you're doing this on your own, you might really need the money. Then sell it. The best way for me on selling, I really like Facebook Marketplace. If you're selling one-off items, put it on there at the price you're willing to sell for a day. If nobody haggles it down and no one buys it, then give it away.
Yep.
All right.
No.
I do work with resellers if it's a whole house, because there often is like 8,000 to 10,000 in the contents of a house. But whatever you think it's worth 10% of that. I'll tell you, the person's going to buy it for 10% of that. Something's only worth what an independent third party is willing to give you for it.
I just posted something that I saw. Yeah. So it wasn't my quote, but it was something about, again, it's like the value isn't what you think it is. Yeah. It's the value of what somebody's willing to pay for.
And I took 30 quotes out of this book, and I put them up on my social media the last couple of weeks. So it's I am Matt Paxton is on my
We're gonna
social
link,
media.
and we'll be linking, which is perfect.
And,
yeah, perfect.
Especially professionals, please, take all that. They're there for all of us. Reshare them. Do what you want with it. I don't care. The quotes, the book really is summed up in a lot of those quotes. But I think if you're listening right now, if you're a professional, it'll reinforce, like you and I are realizing that we do a lot of the same things, and so to reinforce a lot of stuff, it will give you a lot of little communication tips. Believe it or not, there's a lot. And so I wrote the book. It's usually the oldest adult daughter is who hires me, right? The 45 to 65-year-old oldest adult daughter, and because historically that's who had to deal with all this family stuff. Well, now that woman is a CEO, a doctor, a lawyer, a professional. They don't have time. They're not stay-at-home moms. They don't have time to do that, right? And so they have to hire a professional. So if you're a professional, I think the book will really help you remind things, and it's a good reminder. If you're doing it on your own, this book will walk you through everything you need to do. And the real surprise on the book is the 10th chapter. I wasn't going to do it to the very end. I ended up listing 100 items, the main 100 items that people ask me about. Right? And I do a lot of education. Yeah, I do a lot of education for AARP. I'm their downsizing expert, and they've been really good with me. And so I get to go on and teach like 30, 40,000 people on AARP. And this book is in collaboration, by the way, with AARP. And I took from, the literally hundreds of thousands of people I've educated, I took the 100 items that people ask me the most about with China, PN, whatever, and I listed them alphabetically. And I tell you what you can do to donate them or sell them.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. That's like,
it goes through the 100 items. Yeah. And then every resource I use, from professionals to trucks to trash people, and lists all the websites of everybody I work with. And that there's an updated list on my website for that as well.
And that's so valuable, because their resources, I think, is the key for a lot of people, is that I don't know what to do. This is overwhelming. This is emotional. There's all of these emotions. So if you can give somebody a roadmap, some facts, some resources, some direction of where to go, that helps them. That helps to mitigate the other stuff. It doesn't erase it. You're still going to have loss. You're still going to have grief. You're still going to be dealing with all the other stuff. But to at least say, I'm able to, go here. You call this place. Have somebody pick this up.
Where to start. And look, when I started 20 years ago, I didn't know anything. And by the way, most professionals in this industry, we're not in it for the money. I'm going to tell you right now, there's easy ways to make more money. Okay. This is a calling. And most of us like me, had an experience that called us to this, and so I will say this for people that are not professionals that are listening, go for it. We want you to do it on your own. That's really important. Like if you can and it brings you joy and happiness, great for it. But it's really hard work, and most of you will want to hire us. We'll work for an hour or we'll work for 100. We don't care. We just want to help you. And so I've had clients that just say, hey, come in, give me a plan. I'm going to do half of it myself, and then I'll hire you for the end. Great. Like, I just want you happy, right? I want you to enjoy the process. And I tell everybody, and you will hear this 1,000 times when you read this book, tell stories, because that will bring you happiness. It'll bring you joy. You'll laugh, and you'll learn stuff. I think it's a little bit in the book here. I had to change a couple of the stories. I had to mix 2 stories because I had to keep the clients confidential. But one of my favorite things ever, and actually it was the first episode of my of Legacy List, we found a picture, and we always find a picture of hot grandma. Right? When grandma was 16, right? 18, and she's wearing a dress that she shouldn't be wearing. Right. And she's like smoking a cigarette. And I'll never forget. I was like, that's always a tool I use. And I say, oh, wow, who's this is this your granddaughter? And she's like, no, that's me. And I'm like, no, you don't say, and it's always such a ridiculous little dance, but I found this picture and I'm like, whoa, this you? She's like, oh yeah. And the daughter's like, well, wait a minute, who is that? And the daughter's my age, right? The daughter looks at it and she's like, Mom, who's that guy? That's not Grandpa. She's like, oh yeah, that's Pablo. And she's like, let's just, she puts it away. She's like, oh, he was handsome. And she puts it in his pocket, right? And then we're like, no, back up. We want to know about Pablo, right? Tell us all about Pablo. She's like, oh, well, he was a Spanish professor when I taught art at MIT. And her granddaughter goes, wait a minute, you taught at MIT? I just thought you went to MIT. She's like, no, I was an adjunct professor. I taught art history. And that's how they found out that their grandma taught at MIT.
Isn't that crazy?
Right? and had a damn good time doing it, by the way.
Apparently.
Yeah. Well, she goes, oh, he was so handsome. She goes, he's still handsome. I found him on Facebook the other day.
Look at go, Grandma,
And he
go.
was. Damn, guy was damn good looking at like 90 years old, man. She goes, that's what Facebook for, by the way. Facebook's for looking at old boyfriends. There's a 90-year-old lady telling us that. And I was like, she's not wrong. Like, that's basically what it's for. But like, so listen to that story. Middle of a clean out. We're talking about ex-boyfriends. We're talking about the war. We're talking about, she was one of the first women to teach at MIT. That's historic, right? And the granddaughter and the daughter's finding all this out. And then we find out that grandma's on Facebook, right? Don't even knew that. Like, we found all this great stuff about it because we're telling the stories.
I love it. I love it. Matt, tell everybody, we're going to take one more quick break and then put you back in the hot seat. But before we do, tell everybody where they can find you, the book, all the things. Plug away.
Social media, I am Matt Paxton. The book you can buy everywhere: Target, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Please support your local bookstore if you have one. And my TV show is Legacy List. It's on public television. You can watch the first 2 seasons for free on mylegacylist.com. And we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles and content, and even a calculator that will help you figure out what supplies and tools you need to do this yourself if you want at mylegacylist.com.
Wow. And we will, of course, link up to all things Matt Paxton. So don't worry if you don't have a pen, if you're listening to this out and about. We're going to take our quick final break, and then we will wrap things up with putting Matt in the hot seat with our final wrap-up question. So sit tight. If you're a professional organizer or have thought about becoming a professional organizer but not sure where to start, you might want to check out our SBO Partner Program. It's a community of professional organizers from all over the globe who are running their own independent companies, but looking for community and some business strategies on how to grow and scale their business. To learn more, visit simplybeorganized.com and click on the Work With Me tab. All right, Matt. Well, I could sit here and talk to you all day because
obviously I could.
You're full of stories, and I love listening to your stories and everything that you have to say. And I really truly believe that this episode is going to resonate with so many people. I'd like to think that of all of our episodes, but I think specifically there's so much great nuggets of wisdom that you shared that it's really going to be hugely impactful. So please, hi, somebody's there.
Yeah, give me one more minute, babe. Sorry.
That's okay. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. We're gonna wrap up with our quick wrap up questions, which are: in your life, what is a book? And I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna tell you can't use your wife's book. Okay, a book that has inspired that, because you've already said it. That's inspired you, that has had an impact that you either refer back to for yourself or that you refer to other people.
Believe it or not, I'm reading this right now.
Oh, okay.
It's called Into the Deep. It's about the guy that found the Titanic.
Oh,
and
I feel like somebody told me about this book recently.
Dude, it's unbelievable, man. Like, he is incredible, and he like created all these machines. Like, basically, you couldn't find it, so he just went out and invented a bunch of tools to find it. He was actually we didn't know until he wrote the book this year. It was government secrets. He had actually been hired by the government to find a nuclear submarine by the U.S. before the Russians found it.
Oh, wow.
And he had, like, they paid him to build the machine, and then they're like, you got 90 days to find it. And then he found it with like 60 days, and he was like, hey, I got 30 days left. Can I go find the Titanic? And he used it to go find it. He actually found the Titanic while he was looking for the submarine, but he couldn't say anything because he couldn't tell people. So basically for 20 years, we all thought he found the Titanic. He actually found this nuclear submarine from the Cold War. Fascinating story. What I love about it is the guy's a hustler, right? Like, straight up hustler. And when people tell him he couldn't do it, he just went and not only kept doing it, like, he talks about believing in yourself. Like, I mean, he like created the tools, became a scientist to create the tools to go do the job that people told him he couldn't do. Like, he just didn't take no. And I love that. And like, I'm a 20-year overnight success. Like, people are like, oh, you're so lucky. I'm like, yeah. total luck. It's been luck for 25 years, like,
picking up buckets of poop in Queens. That's all luck there.
All luck, right? But like nobody thinks about it. They just think about it. But this guy just kept his mouth shut, kept working. And I love that. I'm still learning from that.
I love it. Love it. Okay. And our final two questions, and you can answer this any way you like. In this particular season of your life, married with your 7 kids, where do you feel like you were the most organized and together? And where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess?
Finances, I'm my most together.
That's great.
That's good. I love it. QuickBooks is like a slot machine. It's like the greatest addiction in the world. And there's such a calm and peace to really knowing, truly knowing what you have and don't have. I love it. So get a hold of once you clean your house, finish the attic, then start your pocket. Hot mess, there's many of them. Time management, I'm a mess. I'm an absolute mess. And pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I struggle with pictures. And there's a chapter of pictures in my book on pictures of what to do. And I really struggle with them. And so I think it's okay. But man, time management, I take on too much. I still don't say no enough.
Yeah.
And I create
work in progress. Mess. Yeah. And that's
I create that mess. I think we often create our messes. We just don't like to admit that.
Absolutely. But I love this question because it goes to show for people that are out there that think if you're in our industry, that we have it all together in every single aspect. And I purposely included that. I include that question for this very reason.
Well, then I need to add this. I just hired a person to help me organize my email.
Oh, that's great.
I hired a professional organizer to help me do my email because I struggle with it.
Digital clutter. We did a whole episode. Yeah. We've done a couple episodes specifically about it. Yeah. Email. Very real. It is a very, very real problem. And
I mean, my wife walked by she's like, how many? I had 10,000 unopened emails.
Well, yeah.
And I'm sure there's some money left on the table in there, but I can't get to all of them. And I gotta get a system. And so I'm learning a system. I'm like at the beginning of learning that system, and it's helping. And it's helping relieve my stress. So whatever's holding you back, get help. You can do it. I hope you buy my book. I hope you watch my show. But if you don't,
we will. We will. Everybody will. Everyone will.
Well,
they're gonna follow that.
I'll say this. Yeah, I'm a big believer in just go do what you need to do for you. Go get help doing it, whatever it is. For a lot of us, it's clutter. And I promise you, your life will be happier. Here I am a year later. I got rid of everything. And turns out all that stuff is nothing. Like where I'm at right now is everything.
And you look great. 30 pounds less.
Thank you.
Healthy and all the things.
I'm going to keep doing it. You won't even know who I am in next year. I'll be so skinny.
Awesome. Well, listen, be healthy though. All right, Matt, thank you so much you are new to our show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Have me back anytime. This was great. You're really, really good.
Well, you're going to hook me up with your wife and we're going to get her on the show as well.
Yeah, she would love it.
We're going to do that. Make sure that you click the subscribe or follow button, whatever you want to click, whether you're watching us on YouTube, whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, whatever. This Organized Life podcast. I am Lori Palau. Until next week, peace out.